Let me quickly start with where we left last time. And I know we were talking about CAA trades.
Yes.
We spoke about confidentiality and like, okay, right. Something which I just wanted to talk about is when you talk about the CIA trades, right? When we talk about the integrity, right? Um, Integrity is something where you have the data which is being kept intact and it's not being accessed by anybody else apart from you. You have certain data that you have saved somewhere and you protected it with the password, and it shouldn't be accessible by somebody else and modifying the data. Right here, I'm just showing you guys just an overview. So right, so these are uh, sort of integrity attacks, right? Web server penetration for data scramblings. Web server penetration is something where you try to access the DNS servers. Right now, I know for a fact you guys have the question. Okay, well now what is a DNS server? What is an IP address? Everything. So do you guys remember the last time I showed you a drawing how the IP address goes is when you type Google,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So that picture is perfect. That picture you can understand, right?
Okay, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. Okay. So now talking about what is a zombie computer. Zombie computer is nothing but you just need some sort of a bait as in you need some sort of let's say for example there are a lot of sites on the internet which are not used, which just there, just simply lying there. So what these kind of attacks will go and investigate on these kind of simply lying websites, and they will use those websites as one of the means to get into a system. So that is a zombie computer. So when we are trying to access these sort of sites, right? So we need some sort of a backup sites. For example, let's say for example you are going to rob a bank, right? But you will not do using your own car. Why? Because the reason being you will be tracked because that's your car and the data is being saved there. Instead, they will use somebody else car, or which is not being used or which is not being tracked for a very long time. So that is something called as a zombie device. So we don't have anybody using it, and nobody can track that. So we're trying to use those and then try to attack. That is called for zombie websites. There are a lot of zombie websites that you guys can go ahead and look through, right? And so that is all about the integrity attack. There's a site called as a Shodan. All right, so what this does is so this particular site, right? So let's say for example I want to just check how many servers are there and Windows servers are there. So I just put in there Windows server, right? I'm just trying to find the different IP address and then try to access. But guys, you shouldn't be doing this because your virtual setup is not yet done, because all this has to be done in a complete uh, virtual setup. If you guys try to do in your current laptop right now, what happens is you'll be backtraced. I'll show you that as well, like what happens. So let me just put in Bangalore server. So what happens is there are a lot of uh, it also show you, right? 1 minute. Okay. Okay, let me just type Bangalore itself. Wait, sunshine. Okay. So if I just type in routers, right? Okay, data daily search limit used. Okay. Okay, this needs to be a premium, but you can search for something. Okay, similar websites. I can also use Census.io, right? But you guys can use as a premium site. You can search for like 10 searches or maybe 15 searches you can do. Okay, and after that it lasts like this, daily limit reached. Okay, so you can use this sense.io, right? So what this does is, this is, probably you can just go and search for the data. So let's say IPv4 host, um let me just check. um, so these are the IP address mappings that you guys will have, right? Let's say for example I just want to find my IP address, right? I just go here, my IP address, right? So this is my IP address. So let me just, this is my public IP address. Okay. So I'll just type in, key in this particular IP address. So I'll be able to find my IP address, right? So the same way for you guys also, you will be having an IP address that is provided by your ISP. ISP is nothing but your Airtel, the connections that you guys have, right? So this is a public IP address which is available to everybody. Now, can they use this public IP address to get into my network? This public IP address is available for the company service providers, right? So now when we talk about, let me just open a notepad. You guys are able to follow me, or you guys are able to?
Yeah, we're good now.
Nikhil, are you able to follow me?
Yeah, yeah. I'm there. No problem. You can go ahead.
Okay. Now what's the difference between a public IP address and private IP address, right? Public IP address is something where your ISP provider, let's say for example, right now I want to start a branch of Act Fibernet. So I'm going to start an Act Fibernet. For me to start the Act Fibernet, there are a lot of customers who will be connected to me, right? You will There will be a lot of customers who are subscribing the network offering with me, right? I'll be the service provider to them. So right now, when a lot of people are want to use my IP address, it should be a public IP address, right? And as a customer, if I'm using Act, right, that will be a private private IP address. So for each customer, they'll be having a private address under a public IP address, right? Which means that Act is a public IP address. That's what you're able to see, but they'll not be able to see my personal IP address. So there's a difference between that. All right. See, because here also it says as Act. Now, in personal IP address, if it's visible, it's very easy to attack, because you just go here. Um, just one simple thing is, all right. So what happens is, when you find your IP address and when you put in here, right, you are able to connect to that desktop. Simple, right? When you're able to connect to this desktop, when the host, or when the target is trying to accept it without his knowledge, you have the complete access of the remote desktop that we're talking about. And that's how most of the attack happens. This virtual connections are something that we need to be very careful about. And these are some things that I am just sharing it for your knowledge, so that you will be able to identify what are the different threats that you guys have, right? And also, right, so it shows here, I mean, who is, let me just go. Okay. So when I just put in here my IP address, you'll get a list of details. What's the see here also it says no publicly accessible services, right? So nobody can, it's a restricted network, right? And these are the certifications as such. So this is just for your information. So if you think that, okay, fine, uh, if I do something, how I'm going to be traced, this is how you will be traced online. Anybody is trying to do a phishing attack, or anybody is trying to uh, hijack a session, these are the ways that you'll be seeing these movies, right? I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure you guys will be seeing these movies, and all of that. In the movies, how do you think that they'll track people, or
Yeah.
network, when they are connected to a network via the mobiles and everything? This is how they connect. They track via using their IP address. Because let's say for example, when you switch on your when you're actually connected to a network, or your ISP, that is your Airtel broadband or your Act broadband, you are connected and you will be traced easily. This uh, there's no way you can mask. But to avoid this, there are some sort of a zombie websites, that we call it as a zombie websites. So that is what, using a zombie website, it'll be like, even if they track, it'll go to the zombie website. So you will not be tracked. But the thing is that you can resolve the DNS servers to ensure that I'm not tracked, but there is a zombie server that is being set up, so that will be tracked. That is how most of the resolution happens. And most of the ISP providers, they need to be very careful in setting up these certifications or security levels, just to ensure that they don't have these sort of breaches, right? That's for your information, right? And let's say, for example, these are things that you guys showed on. Just go and try this, but you will be able to find a lot of IP address. Guys, do not even try to you know ping them, because they'll be actively monitoring all the sites, right?
Okay.
Just for your information, both of you, and people who will be listening to the recordings as well, please do not go ahead and try, even for uh, a normal ping setting, right? Do not, please just don't do it. Because the moment that you open the doors, and then when you just try to ping, let's say, for example, google.com, right? So this is how the reply comes from. So this is how the ping check happens, right? So what's a ping check? Basically, it's like, just trying to connect with the endpoint, the both the ways. Are we connected? So right here you see 0% loss, which means that you're successfully connected, right? The same way, when you ping an IP address, the moment that when you get connected, you will have 0% loss, which means that you are getting a response and you will get connected. And let's say, for example, when you go to that like MSRTC, right? Right. Okay. So when you just connect via remote desktop, it will get hooked up, as in, like, sorry, it will get connected, right? So just ensure that this is for your information again. uh, the main reason why I'm talking about stressing on this is because it's very important to you guys to experiment in a virtual environment. Next, I'm going to talk about what is a virtual environment, how we set that up, so that you guys are pretty safe, right? So all of this will is for your understanding of how this threats happen, what is all about. People talk about cybersecurity attacks and such. Let's say, for example, have you guys heard about Zoom bombing?
I've not heard about it. Amma. I
Okay.
have no idea about it.
Nikhil, you just called, right? So you just called and you spoke about, okay, Zoom. I see a lot of
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
attacks
yeah.
happening. So
That's
that is
common in
called
India.
Zoom bombing, right? So
Yeah.
just bombing into some sort of an application, as in, jumping or getting illegal access, or trying to hop into a session without
No, like
having the,
what is happening exactly? Like, what is the use of hacking this thing? What do they get?
right. Let's say, for example, this particular session, right? It's connected in a restricted
Yeah.
environment. Let's say, for example, if I am trying to use my credentials to log in to Zoom, right? How do I
Mm-hmm.
gain? The moment that that is a vulnerability, the moment that I have a loophole, I just get into the system, I
Mm-hmm.
just get into a session. That's just a way to get into my system. That's it. Because what
Okay,
happened was,
okay, okay.
initially when I shared the Zoom link, right, it didn't have a password.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who has my link can attend. Anybody who has my
Okay,
link.
okay. Okay.
And now if you see, right, so there will be a password which is tagged encrypted. So only the
Mm-hmm.
people with the link and the password can attend. That's called a secure
Okay.
link.
Yeah,
So
I remember in the first session it didn't
yeah,
ask any password kind of thing and all, like
yeah,
just like that I entered. On the second section, it asked the password thing. And all.
that's the new patch. Because what is happening is, now all the meetings are held online. So let's say for
Yeah, yeah.
any companies who are discussing about their future prospects, their financial stats, their
Okay.
upcoming projects, a lot of
Um,
discussions will happen. Those are confidential things, right? And stocks, how the stocks are falling and everything. So let's say for example somebody is uh, dropping into the session and they are recording the session as we are talking now. When somebody drops in and then when they record this entire session, and they will be able to, if they have the confidentiality, right, that's broken,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The main principle, the confidentiality is broken, integrity is broken. And they can
Mhm.
also modify, saying that, hey, Ashok was talking, but then he was talking something which is not relevant or something which was offensive. And they
Mhm.
can put across saying that this guy was doing something else, and these sessions are something else, and they can modify it. So there, the three traits or CIA traits is broken. So that is the main fundamental thing which happened in Zoom. A lot of sessions, a lot of confidential data, a lot of I can share a lot of data, websites, URLs, and even my credentials, right? Even my own credentials for my laptops or my IP address will be traced. So those traced data was kept on sold. Those datas were
Mhm.
kept on sold on a I mean, we call it as a dark web. Dark web is something where all critical datas, all these government files, and all this um, highly confidential datas are there. So it's very difficult to get those access, but once you get, these kind of loopholes are there. Once you go into it, and then once you get those data, and then when you try and sell it, you make money out of it. So that's how it was, you know hacked into any sort of sessions, and gaining those controls on datas and everything, and was kept for public auction. Right now what happened is the new patch, this basically happened in the past, as in, like, let's say for example, before the update. Initially you said, right, without the password I was able to join. So this
Mhm.
happened before that, and not now.
Okay.
With the recent update, what they've done is they've encrypted. They use a password. Two-phase authentications are there. A lot of authentication security factors are there, just to ensure that the uh, security around is safe. So right now, if you ask me, it's pretty much safe. It is pretty much safe, but there are again a lot of vulnerabilities. But yeah, we need to work on it. But
Mhm.
we as a let's say for example, we as a security professional, we should be able to think like them.
Mhm.
Okay, how can they come across a lot of loopholes and finding the back doors and come again and again, right? Just imagine, this is just one sort of an attack. There's a lot of attack that happens every day, every minute. Let it be within our personally or financial losses. There are a lot of losses, but people, even when they use Facebook, or when they use any sort of WhatsApp, or when they click a link, just a link, it's enough to get into their setup, and just to track their data and activities. It's more than enough. On Facebook, the point is, you are yourself letting out your data. And I'll show you that as well. Okay, fine. How What happens when these kind of the moment that we call it as gathering information. All this comes into picture. How you can probably gather information, get into blacklist somebody, and do all of that, servers, and a lot of other things. Yeah. All right. um right. Availability again, is nothing but just to ensure that the requested information, right, and the data which is already been there in the system is is available right there as needed by authorized person. Let's say for example, I save the data with with certain restrictions, only I'm able to see it. When, let's say, when you get an access, unauthorized access to that particular data, and whatever you see and whatever I see, it's the same. So that's nothing but the availability, right? And And just a minute, I'm just gonna do one thing.
Earphone kuda call.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's Patrick who's joined. Okay. I'm just gonna mute it, guys. So if you guys want to ask something, just put it in a chat, or you can also unmute yourself. Just very simple. Just go to manage participants, and then you can just unmute yourself, right? Um, right. Okay. Um, right. So you have this sort of a sessions. Let's say, for example, availability of attack. We know what is an availability. Let's say, for example, the data that I've stored in some place, and only I'm able to see it, and I'm able to access it. The same way the attacker is able to access it, but is able to view or access the same data that I'm seeing. That's called availability, right? One of the major attacks during availability is called as denial of service attacks. That's called as the DOS attack, right? You will be able to see these kind of attacks pretty much everywhere. Let me just all right, okay, great. Okay, so these kind of denial of service attacks will come into picture. You'll be able to see most of the places. Why? Because let me just tell you this: when you're browsing let's say Amazon or Flipkart, so what happens is, to reduce their productivity, to reduce their incomes or income productivity, let's say for example, the to slow the slide, they'll increase the traffic flow by just increasing the number of requests. So the moment that it increases as a threshold, right, you just have this, any site you're trying to reach, let's say for example Flipkart, it'll say server down, or it'll say like, okay fine, at this point in time it's not able to reach it. That is called as a denial of service attack. You guys will be able to come across, and I think in the past for sure you will be able to relate what I'm trying to say. Because these are the attacks. Usually what happens, right? So these are the attacks whenever there is a lot of query for that particular website, just to ensure there is a lower traffic flow, or try to reduce the productivity, they have this denial of service attacks. And we'll also be checking on how to do this sort of an attacks, and then how to recover from that, right? So now can anybody tell me what's a fully qualified domain name? Right. Okay. FQDN is nothing but, let's say, for example, I type www.google. The moment that I type Google dot, right, it comes on com. So that's a fully qualified domain name. So let's say, for example, any dot coms that you guys are seeing, right, everything is a fully qualified domain names. Anything that you type, facebook.com, let it be, or let it be anything, a dot com, that's a fully qualified name, right? And let's say let me just quickly go and talk about virtualizations, right? I know it's kind of till now, any questions that you guys have? Patrick, I know you've joined now, but I know you might have a lot of questions, but you can just put it in the chat, and then I'll probably just answer that. Are you able to follow me? Are you able to yeah, you can just put it in the chat. Nikhil, are you able to follow me? I'm unmuted. Are you able to follow me, guys?
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Okay, okay. There's one more. Okay, Patrick, I think he just typed in a message. Okay. All right. Okay. Um. Let me just give you an insight about, let's say for example, last time we spoke about how when you type google.com, how the IP address is getting resolved, right? um, Let me just do one thing. All right. So we know for a fact that last time we spoke about, we just have uh, let me just quickly uh, brief this again, because I know there are a lot of new people who just came in, right? um, this is Ashok's PC, right? And this is my router, and this is my ISP provider, that is Act Broadband. Right now I have Act. Okay, I have Act. And my PC is connected to the router in two ways. One is LAN cable. LAN cable is nothing but the cable that you guys have. One is a LAN cable, and then one more is the Wi-Fi, right? I know you guys have connected from Wi-Fi. I know, right? So that's called as a WAN, and this is LAN, right? And this is the ISP, and then you just come here, right? Okay, so now I type in www.google.com, and what happens is the first thing, right? Even when you type in any site that you type in, what first thing, the basic structure of how any IP resolution works is, like, when I type www.google.com or any website, right? Google.com, it checks for the IP address, right? It translates itself to an IP address, right? So now this IP address is sent to the ISP, and in turn it's sent to the Google server, right? So now here in the interim, right, there are three steps which happens, right, where it checks, okay, where it checks. And one is local cache, we call it as local cache, right? Local cache is nothing but these are value returns which are temporarily stored on your device. Local cache, we call it as, unless and until you restart your system or shut down your system, it will be there. And second thing is host file. These host files are way important, guys, because host files are something which are not dynamic, as in they don't change, and often when you try to edit it, you will be you should be very careful on this host file. So you guys will get to know what is a host file. And the last thing would be DNS. And if they're not able to find these two will be on a system. If they're not able to find on these two, it'll go and resolve the DNS. So right now, when it goes here, domain name system, we call it as, this called as a domain name system, right? So when this IP address has to go, it translates. IP address is nothing but a numerical value. So it has to find the corresponding alphabetical relation, and then it has to retrieve back. So that is how it happens. So when this IP address and goes and finds a resolution for this particular DNS server, which is being certified by the ISP, which is being provided by the ISP, right? It's very important that you need to have this DNS server, right? And it retrieves back and it pulls back the data, and then it shows to Ashok. So right now there are ways for any attacker to give you a wrong DNS name. So let's say for example google.com, attacker can actually replicate a google.com, give you a different DNS number. So when you go to any login page or any website, when you enter your login credentials, right, this is how you get, like, hacked into some accounts. So there will be a, a duplicate DNS name which will be getting resolved to your IP address, right? Instead of going to this IP address DNS, the IP address will get resolved in this particular DNS, which is actually duplicate. And when it gets resolved, you'll be able to see the same website. There'll be no much difference, but you need to understand very carefully that which site is legit. that is something you need to work on. We will be ensuring that you guys understand this, right? So when this particular DNS results back, and when you enter your credentials, right, the attacker will store all your information. So this is how one of the information gathering or trying to know your leads or your target happens, right? Just for your information. Yeah, this is very important. Just try to understand this, right? Just if you're not able to understand, just give me a ping, or let me know, like, I can just uh, share a couple of videos. Just try to understand this basic concepts, because on this basic concepts is what we'll be dealing every day, right? Cool. uh Everybody clear with whatever I spoke, right? Okay. Okay. Patrick. Okay. All right. Quickly, I know that was a lot of information there, and unless and until we get into the picture, we try to understand what exactly is happening, what are the root cause, and how we deal with this threads, we'll not be able to relate the dots. Trust me on this. I know it's kind of difficult to go through this, because you're not able to okay, why is this Ashok is talking about all of this, does it make sense, right? You will be able to connect the dots once we do the testings, right? Right. One major thing is understanding threats, vulnerability, and risk, right? Just read through this, right? The threat is something which is basically doing harm to an organization. There are three ways of performing threats. One is natural, intentional, and unintentional. Natural ways are maybe, probably like earthquakes. Intentional is something um, where you want to steal the data, and then you do it on purpose. Unintentional is something where, well, let's say for example, a employee is working and they try to, within their network, they try to access some sort of a website, and they provide their credentials. That is unintentional. Without their knowledge, they're just giving away their credentials. That is unintentional, right? And there is something called as a threat assessment techniques that we will be learning about. Nothing to worry about this. So these are more, just trying to get into detail, but you guys don't have to worry about all this, right? um right. So just keep in mind, vulnerability is nothing but weakness on the system. So how your system, if your network or a system is weak, we usually perform an assessment, right? And how we do the assessment, and how we just ensure that if your system is protected or not, there are tools which probably there. So there is a threat intelligence tool, maybe McAfee. That is the reason why antivirus is into picture. Maybe you would have seen that a lot of people talk about, okay, why this antivirus is needed, and what is the purpose of this antivirus basically. So these are the purpose, or these are the threat intelligence tools that we have, just to ensure that your system is protected by a lot of malwares or phishing attacks, and a lot of that, right? So I just want to skip all of this, because you guys will be able to understand better as I'm going through, right? Just understand this one. So the risk assessment is nothing but identifying the threat, analyze and evaluate, and then provide the treatment, right? This is nothing but, guys, this is ISO standard for uh, cybersecurity, as in like, data security. So this is just a document. Just go through it. I'll just ping in the chat box so that you guys just go through it, if you have time. I mean, it's useful, right? Right now, CISO is nothing but Chief Information Security Officer. These are the high levels who just take decision, like how the security networks or security assessment or the solutions need to be implemented. Simple. Okay. So these things are not that important, I would say, but just For your information, I've just put it across here. Right, perfect. So today we're talking about virtualization. So I just wanted to just quickly give you a glance about what is virtualization all about. Right? Are we good, guys? Till now, so we're just trying to understand certain things. So right now we are actually getting into setting up our main labs. So this is where you need to be very important, because the past we're just trying to understand the basics. Okay, what about this, what about that, what about understanding threats, risk. But right now, this is how, well, let's say for example somebody is asking you, right? Okay, how is that you guys are doing testing? So this is how you need to answer them. You need to tell them that you are setting up your virtual environment or a demo environment which is protected, and you're not doing any live testings or any live attacks. So how you're setting up the virtual environments is something that I just wanted to share, because it's very important for you guys to understand, right? If you guys take this idea, and when you guys discuss with somebody who's an industry expert, they'll be pretty much impressed with you guys. Trust me on this, because all these concepts are something very good to understand, and it has a lot more value towards cybersecurity, right? Basically, we're talking about every aspects of computer technology here. We're not talking about just one cybersecurity, but then you're getting to know what are the different operating systems. Right now, when you use your laptops, you will be understanding, okay, I'm running on a Windows, or how I'm setting up the Windows. It's simple, right? Talking about virtualization, right? Let's say for example, right now you have a laptop, right? So that laptop has Windows servers, or Windows operating system, right? You have this Windows 10 or Windows XP installed on it. On top of that, you install your applications, as in you install your Chrome, or you see, this is my Windows 10 operating system. I've installed Zoom application, I've installed Google Chrome. So these are the applications that I've installed. This is a normal, without virtual machine. This is a normal system. So right now I'm talking to you guys without a virtual machine. Now, let's flip to what is a virtual machine. So how it looks like. Let's say, for example, have you ever guys wondered, and anybody knows what is a virtual machine or what is virtualization? Prijit, you?
Um, well, to my understanding, it's a kind of a container-like thing, in which it is a separate kind of, we can use it as a separate kind of OS or something.
Ah, perfect. Yeah, simple, guys. What Prijit said was, yeah, correct, right? Um, Let me just close this up. Okay, where is that? Right. Okay, so what Prijit said was right. So what happens here is, with the VM, you will have one physical laptop. I'll just have one system, but I'll be able to use multiple operating systems. As in, I can use Windows 10, I can use Windows any other version, XP, or any other version. I can use Ubuntu, I can use Fedora. These are different flavors of operating systems. On see here, you have this guest operating system, one, two, three, or n number of operating systems you can have. The main purpose of using virtualization is that I don't have to invest money on buying my infrastructures or laptops. Reduced infrastructure cost. I just have to set up on my laptop, single laptop, a different flavors of operating systems. That's a simple concept of virtualization. There's no much thing about it. Even you guys, when you have these laptops, right, you guys can try it out. This VMs is a very good exercise to work with, because you will have your own environment inside the laptops itself. You'll have a different flavors. Simple. Any questions that you guys have? Nikhil, Patrick, you guys were able to understand what is the virtualization, right?
It'll be better if you just tell me once more. I didn't
Yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
sure,
If you
sure.
don't
That's
mind.
not a problem. Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. Right. So Nikhil, right now you're using a laptop, right? So
Yes,
you
yes,
have a
yes.
laptop, right? So you just switch
Uh-huh.
on your laptop, and then you know how system works. You just select the operating systems, and then you log into the system, correct?
Hmm.
Right. And then you start using the applications. That is normal. That is
Yeah, yeah.
without virtualization. That is without
Uh-huh.
VM. That is
Okay,
without a virtual machine. So
okay,
right
okay.
now, let's say for example, you have a system where you logged in, and
Hmm.
then on the top of Windows operating system, on top of this application, right, I want to
Hmm.
use a different operating system. I want to
Hmm.
use Ubuntu is an operating system, and also
Hmm.
Fedora is an operating system,
Okay.
and also Linux.
Hmm.
Kali Linux is something that we'll be
Hmm.
discussing about. Linux is also an operating system. So these operating system, why they are used is because they are really tight in security, and they are
Okay, okay.
user friendly. So on top of this, I started Windows. On top of this, I want to use Linux,
Hmm.
right? In the past, like, let's roll back around some 15 years back. What happens is, if I want to use Linux, I need to buy a new system itself.
Okay,
I
okay.
cannot use on existing system.
Hmm.
One system, one operating system. That's all I can do.
Hmm.
But with this virtualization, what happens? One system, two, three operating system I can use
Okay,
simultaneously. I can use,
okay,
right?
okay.
So that
Got it.
is the whole difference about it, right?
Okay.
Just to show you, right? Um, so this is VirtualBox. So I'm just showing it to you. See, right? So I have Windows. I'm using Windows. On top of Windows, I'm using Linux operating systems. Okay, simple.
Hmm.
So I'll just go here. I'll start, but I don't want to do it right now. But I'll just go here and then I'll start. And then I can also install again one more Windows here.
Okay, okay.
On top of this Windows 10, I can install again Windows XP. Or if not, I
Hmm.
can again install Windows 10. So what happens is, on top of this Windows, I'm installing one more Windows. That is basically virtualization.
Okay, okay. Got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
right now. So this is a very important concept, guys. When you have a discussion with somebody who is already in the industry, right, they'll be kind of surprised. Okay, fine. This is good. This is good. Or Nikhil or Patrick or so they are able to talk about this. This is a very good concept, because this is how you reduce cost for any sort of organization, right? So this is all about virtualization. So right now, you guys will have to download something called as the virtual box. Just take a note, because you guys might forget this. You guys need to have virtual box. How to download virtual box and how to install Kali Linux is something that I'll be able to tell you guys once you have the laptops. Because the reason why I'm asking you guys to download this virtual box and Kali Linux is because Kali Linux is basically used for any sort of a penetration testing. Penetration is testing is nothing but, probably you will be experimenting how to reach to certain systems, or get through certain websites. So this is how Kali Linux is used, basically for a penetration testing. Penetration, as in, guys, is not too technical, but let's try to understand in a common term. Penetration is nothing but try to get into something unauthorized way, right? Like how we have this Zoom calls, people just try to get in. That is also called as a penetration. But penetration testing is something done by ethical hacker who tries to get into the system, and tries to identify the loopholes or vulnerabilities for any systems. So that's how we do it. Okay, so just ensure that you guys have this VirtualBox and Kali Linux, right? Let me just quickly, I know we are off the time. Just quickly talk about where you guys can download VirtualBox, right? I'll also share the link, right? Right, okay, you have here. So there is a VirtualBox is a free open source software. Now open source softwares are something which is free to use. They just use this kind of terminologies in business. So I don't want to use these terminologies because it might be confusing for others. I'll just keep it very simple so that everybody can understand. It's a free software. Yeah, everybody can use it. VirtualBox, right? VirtualBox is nothing but you're just creating an environment. Look here. So you're just creating an environment to start a platform, to start your operating systems. like Kali Linux. You start that, you're just creating this virtual box. That's it, simple. It's very easy. Once you type, let's say for example, once you type virtualbox downloads, right? So you just go in the first link, so you'll be able to find it, Windows host 6.1 platform packages. Just download this one, right? So you'll be able to find it. Just click, it's free for use, so you can click this. Now coming back to Kali Linux, right? Kali Linux is just type Kali Linux download, so you will be able to download certain this is official site. Okay, just go to their official site, you will be able to
Uh,
find. Yeah, Nikhil.
I like. Can we download it in our phone also, or we have to download it only in a laptop?
No, this has to be done on the laptops. If not,
Okay.
that's completely fine. I'll be demoing each and everything. It's not necessarily that you guys need to have this, but the reason why I'm saying is I don't want you to try on your active systems. Please do not
Mhm.
try this, because it's very important that you guys have virtual environments. This
Okay.
will be protected. This will be like, you'll be creating two images and two environments, and then you'll be attacking within those. So you'll
Mhm.
be trying to play around with that. So basically we're trying to create a lab. That is completely fine. I can probably show it to you guys. That's fine. If you guys don't have system, don't worry about it. That's completely fine. Okay, but
Okay.
if you guys want one step to go ahead and try to experiment, you can go for it, right?
Okay.
Guys who I think Prajit or anybody who's on the call or listening to the recording, right? If you guys want to experiment, if you guys want to get your hands dirty, just go for it. Just try to install and experiment what is this all about, and then you will get to know a lot more how to deal with this attacks, and how we are dealing with real time um, like threats, and how we are tracing it and how we are treating it. So you'll get to know a lot of things. So just ensure that you guys do not do it on your real time systems, because you will be exposed, and then you will be backtraced. Like literally you'll be backtraced. Whatever you do, just be ensure that you guys are safe, right? All of these are your key items that I'm sharing for your information again, right? So these are the two things, and then you guys can ping me if you have any where should I download when Windows only is available for MacBook. Patrick, this is available for MacBook as well, but you need to uh, check. Yeah, it is available for Mac. iOS, it's available. So don't worry about it. It's available for both Windows and Mac. That's completely fine. But just ensure that you guys have very good operating systems there. You don't corrupt anything, right? But the main thing what I'm trying to achieve is trying to set up a virtual environment so that you guys can play around, basically play around. Unless and until you get your hands dirty and play around, you'll not be able to get what I'm trying to say. Trust me on
Sure.
this. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's completely fine. If you guys who don't have laptops, it's fine, because I'll be showing it to you guys, but at the same time I'll be sharing you some YouTube videos as well. Just go across, and then you guys will have certain idea about what we're trying to do. Okay, so these are the two things. Try and experiment over the weekend, downloading Kali Linux and trying to install the virtual box, right? So it'll be useful for you guys, and the next sessions are probably we'll discuss about any sort of an issues that you guys have. Okay, and one more thing is Netcraft. Last thing for today that I would just wanted to discuss about is Netcraft, right? uh, let's say what is Netcraft all about. So you have this Netcraft is basically an extension for your website. So this is used for any sort of information gathering. So let's say for example, I have this particular site, any site. Tell me any site, guys. You guys have any site in mind? Tell me that. Any site that you guys have, any site.
Edureka.com. Edureka.
Right, hold on. I will have this right. Okay. All right. So any site that you guys have, right? The first thing is you'll have to probably investigate and try to find the basics, or like, just trying to find where's the site from and try to identify um, the main source. So let's say, for example, this particular site, I just put in this particular site. So it also says that what's the ranking for this site, and it also shows how long it's been, date first seen. So it was started on 2000 on it. That's too long. And you'll also have a name server that you have, and their IP address. This is a public IP address, right? And DNS domain name. So I was talking here, let's say, where is it? I was talking here in the whiteboard, right? This DNS, right? This particular DNS, this particular
Yeah.
DNS name, here you have it. So this is a DNS name. When somebody morphs this DNS name, right? It's very difficult to do that. But when they morph the DNS name, the IP address will be getting resolved in this morph DNS name. So which means that, let's say, for example, I just type edureka.com, and the IP address is getting resolved in different DNS name. That's actually saying that any credentials that the student enter, or anything that's being entered, that'll be stored in a different site. And the attacker will have all the paid credentials, as in, like, let's say, for example, all the ID credentials, everything will be there with them. And also it also says security levels, certificates, and yeah, you have this here. So basically, this kind of, getting to know your target, just trying to understand where they're from, and how it's going to be, and all of that. So it's kind of useful link, to probably so it also says here the site reports. So when you just go here, yeah, not to report this, not to report on this site. Okay. So you will have there, so you will have a lot of information here, right? The hosting country, and so that, right? This is just for your information, just to um, understand how we deal with things, right? For now, just ensure that like, you just go around and play around with this, but not go into deep, right? Just a few of the things. And also there's one more thing. Let's say, for example, pawn okay. This is the last thing that I just wanted to share. Let's say, for example, you guys have a password, right? Let's say, what is the password? What usually password people keep is happy 123. Let's see if they have somebody has kept this password or not. Pawn three berries. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
this basically checks. Let's say, for example, how many times your password has been used. Let's say, for example, you just keep your password as let it be anything, um, just a random password. I'm just trying to. What they just usually keep their name 123, something like this only they keep, right? So most of them, see, good news, no pawnage found, as in, like, nobody has used this password. And I'm surprised nobody used this password. Right? So it actually gives you see, two breach cited, right? So basically this gives you an idea about how the passwords are being set up, or what sort of passwords that they guys use, and all of that, right? So just these are just for your information, right? These first two sessions have been just trying to understand, but from the third session we'll be actually getting into depth, trying to understand a bit more what we do, right? Okay. For now, that's it from my end. Any questions or anybody has, you guys can just go ahead and just post it across.
And I have a question. And now which we are seeing this PWNED password, right?
Hmm.
Is it wrong if someone has a similar password like us?
There is a password generator. So what happens is the moment that these are auto generated, as in like it's not wrong, but I would say that most of them, like let's say they'll keep their names and followed by numbers. That is that is the way that probably they identify. Right? It's very easy to crack those.
बता रहा हूँ शायरी.
Okay, okay.
It's very easy to crack those sort of password. So I would say probably if you find these kind of this thing, just ensure that you keep a bit more strong. It's very easy to crack those passwords. It's very easy to crack those kind of passwords if you ask me.
So the software will randomly check for every possible passwords, and if it's not unique, we will get breached, right?
There are that's the first step, as in like the setting up your passwords.
Okay,
And what happens is, mm, um, I mean this one sec. Let me show you here itself. Um, so what happens is the usernames. You're talking about the username and password, right? So you'll also get here usernames.
okay,
And yeah, it's not a bit of it. So you will be able to get how many users are connected, what are the usernames that being connected to this network, right? Yeah, details. Yeah,
okay,
right. See, once you get the usernames, right, so it's gonna be this showdown has it. So once you guys try this Bangalore and then go around and then Windows Server, because it's not the premiums is over, because it's not able to, but then you will get the usernames, the IP address connected. So with
okay,
with the username, the username is AHS show das. My username is that. We're keeping that username. So what happens is this particular tool, or there are other tools as well, but they'll be able to trigger the like the crack password. That's what I'm talking about. So usernames are easy to figure out, and simultaneously the password. So just ensure that these are the basic security measures that you guys can take as an individual. Yeah.
okay,
You
okay,
guys can also share with others, as in like what are the steps that they can take just to ensure that things are good for them, which they can initially like step into it and then ensure that they are safe. Right? You guys can take that small initiative or step just to ensure that things are safe around.
okay.
Okay. Patrick, how did you find, Patrick? Was this a bit over the board, or how did you find?
It was interested, bro. I was, yeah.
Okay, okay, great. I know. I mean, this is your first session, and yesterday we spoke about. Um, what I would probably tell you is just like uh, research a bit. Just try to Google what I spoke about. Then you will be
Okay.
trying to able to relate it. This does not involve coding, but trying to understand how the systems work end to end. Simple. And uh, Nikhil, how did you find Nikhil? Was it was
It was quite interesting also. At the same time, it was a bit boring also.
Yeah. See, I
Yeah,
told you at the starting of the session itself.
yeah,
I gave you a heads up, because these are the things that somewhere it will be interesting, or somewhere it will be definitely boring. Concepts are like that. You can't
yeah. I can
yeah.
understand. I can understand.
Right, you can't expect every time
Yeah,
it to
yeah,
be
yes, yes.
exciting, but definitely we're going to do a lot of exercise where it will be a bit exciting, right? I hope probably in the next week I'll structure in a way like that. All right. Okay, guys, I know it's past 15 minutes. Thank you everybody for joining the call. If you guys have any Prajit, you called me yesterday. I was sorry, I was not able
You
to
are
call you back.
eating, yeah.
Yeah, after you want to stay back on the call, I can just talk. And Nikhil and Patrick, thanks much for joining the call, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you so much.
sure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
bye, bye.
yeah. All right. Yep. Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, should I call your phone? Is it okay if I phone you now?
Yeah, you can phone, you can call me, you can
Yeah.
yeah.